So many people contact us every single week wanting us to help them figure out where they would be happy living in the Tampa area. And these are the top areas we end up recommending based on those conversations. Here we go. I'm Sam, and thanks for coming by the Living in Tampa channel, where we make videos about living in Tampa. If that's something you want to follow along with, don't forget to subscribe. We have 2 videos coming out every single week. I'm also a realtor and have a team of realtors that work with me. We would love to be your real estate choice in the Tampa area. Don't hesitate to reach out, call, text, or email anytime. Trying to figure out where you want to live in the Tampa area is pretty overwhelming. Tampa is big. Tampa's really big. Now, the city of Tampa is like 400,000 people. But it's just this little piece here in the middle. Other areas like Jacksonville and Duval County are synonymous, so all of the county is Jacksonville. Where in Tampa, all of Hillsborough County is not Tampa. So the numbers seem a little bit different, but if you look at the whole MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area of Tampa, it's a little over 4 million people. And sometimes that includes Bradenton and Sarasota. Sometimes Bradenton, Sarasota, down to like Port Charlotte area is its own MSA, but sometimes that area gets lumped into Tampa. I don't really think it should get lumped into Tampa because it's a bit too far. And mostly it's a bit too far from the airport. Think about this other example. Just because people in Wyoming drive to the Denver airport to travel places doesn't make Wyoming part of Denver. Sarasota traveling to Tampa is kind of similar to me. Now, not as far, obviously same state, blah, blah, blah. But just because they use our airport doesn't make it part of our MSA. So let's get right into these top areas. And these are not in any particular order. We're gonna start with Wesley Chapel. Wesley Chapel got super popular 2020, 2021. Some of these new developments up in this area, Epperson, Murata, Winding Ridge, a lot of these different developments were doing a lot of marketing into other areas where people often move from. So people often move from New York City, people often move from Toronto, other areas in the Northeast. These developers were doing a lot of marketing to those areas and trying to sell these Florida homes. So people called every single day asking me about that big development with that big crystal lagoon, and I had to give them some of the bad news. Mostly the bad news was this area is further from Tampa than you realize. Wesley Chapel is a very thoughtful area, but it still is kind of far from Tampa, from the airport, from the beaches, from downtown, depending on what you want to be close to. And close to you might be 45 minutes or an hour. And if that is true, if you want to be an hour from the beach, then Wesley Chapel could be a really good option, because you're also about an hour from Disney over there, and that might be the balance you're looking for. Wesley Chapel is a very suburban area. It's about 60,000 people, and the way that it's shaped and the way that it has been developed, it doesn't have much of a center. There is a big shopping mall, like the Wiregrass Mall, a nice outdoor mall, that feels a little bit like the center, but I don't like calling a mall the center of a town. We'll get into this with some other towns, why I'm even making this comparison, but this is something that stands out to me about Wesley Chapel. There's really not much of a downtown. Now, what might you like about Wesley Chapel? You're probably drawn to it because of the newer homes. You're probably drawn to it because of the better than average schools. And both of those things are very true. We're actually drawn to it because of the potential to have about 2 or 3 acres around our house. There are some areas on the northwest side of Wesley Chapel, kind of close to this big preserve area, where you can have quite a bit more space. We're drawn to it because of that. Other people are often drawn to it because of the newer homes. And because it is a bit further from the beach and a bit further from downtown Tampa, from the airport, prices sometimes do reflect that by being a little bit lower. Obviously lower than like West Chase or, the same house in Clearwater, and we'll get into some of those details too. The next place that people often ask about, and I've also made videos comparing these 2 areas, Wesley Chapel and then the Bradenton Riverview area. Bradenton Riverview is southeast of downtown Tampa, Bradenton being the kind of primary anchor of that with about 100,000 people, and then Riverview being about the same size just south of there. Compared to Wesley Chapel, this Bradenton Riverview area has grown a little too fast. and it feels a little bit congested along this I-75 area, even as you get into town, get into these neighborhoods. As you get along the edges of it, it feels a little bit more open. As you get out toward Fishhawk, which is technically in Lithia, it feels a little more planned, kind of that master planned kind of vibe that a lot of people are looking for. Now, what might draw you to the Bradenton Riverview area is easier access to downtown if you need to work downtown, or maybe you're working at Citibank out there on the east side of downtown. And in this area, you can get quite a bit more for your money than you can in the Wesley Chapel area. I'm often trying to convince my wife that this area we can get a lot more bang for our buck, but we have family over in Tarpon Springs and it just feels a little bit too far for her. Our clients that have considered the Bradenton Riverview area and then changed their mind, once they visited, they realized it's a little bit more congested than I wanted, and the schools aren't good enough for me to put up with that. So it's just a different feel. As you get further east, it's going to feel more and more similar to Wesley Chapel, especially those areas that we like with the bigger lots, but it doesn't have that kind of thoughtful master planned vibe like Wesley Chapel does. Okay, next on our list is St. Petersburg. People often separate St. Petersburg from Tampa when they're searching, but it is really part of the same area. When you first move here, you'll realize that these areas feel so similar. It's really just a bridge that connects St. Petersburg with South Tampa. And it's all just part of the same city, part of the same vibe. Of course, people in St. Pete and Tampa are picky as I say that. They might disagree with me, I don't really care. The people that choose St. Petersburg often choose it because it's vibe. It is an area with a really cool downtown and a very different downtown than other cities in Florida. This downtown feels a lot more local. There's a lot of stuff, and of course people are visiting the downtown from the whole area, but it also feels like a lot of people are walking to shops or walking to restaurants. There's a lot of local engagement in small businesses and in small stores, and that gives like a really unique vibe to St. Pete. Of course, you still have the big condo buildings over on the water. You have the big multi-billion-dollar pier that's beautiful and awesome, and they do all kinds of stuff all around downtown. Weekly farmers market, there's Formula One races there every year, like all kinds of stuff like that. And now there's even a bus line that goes just north of, I think it goes north of Central Avenue, so it goes east and west and connects downtown St. Pete to St. Pete Beach, which St. Pete Beach is technically a different town and one of the top beaches in the whole country. So St. Petersburg is quite a bit bigger than the first two areas we talked about. St. Petersburg has a population of a little over 250,000 and is very connected to all these other towns around it. When you drive out of St. Petersburg, you don't often realize that you're in a different town all of a sudden. It all feels very similar on the south side of that peninsula. Okay, next on the list is Dunedin. Dunedin is a very, very popular town, about 50,000 people, very central to Pinellas County, and has a really unique vibe. There's a trail, the Pinellas Trail, that goes all the way up and down the county, and in Dunedin it goes right through the downtown. And this city has really capitalized on this by having a lot of like breweries and restaurants that face the trail. So as you're going along on your bike with your dogs, like you can stop and have a couple beers and some good food and like go on about your bike ride. And this is a big draw to a lot of people. This is an area that a lot of people want to live, us included. We actually shopped for a house there when we first moved down here. But Dunedin is not very big and it's pretty densely populated. So it's hard to find a place, and prices seem to keep going up and up and up. So a lot of our clients that really like Dunedin have looked on the edges in these other towns like Clearwater and Palm Harbor, areas where they could still easily access downtown Dunedin. And along these edges, they feel like very similar towns. They really don't feel different. And because Dunedin is surrounded on three sides by these other towns, there's quite a few opportunities. Dunedin and then especially Palm Harbor have quite good schools. Dunedin more elementary, and then Palm Harbor more high school. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and people sometimes choose that area just because of the schools. Okay, and last on the list is a big chunk of places. So all the way from Wesley Chapel, as you go toward the water, staying in that North County, Pasco County. From Wesley Chapel, you go into Lute, Land O'Lakes, Odessa, and then Newport Richey and Trinity. Trinity's kind of its own town, kind of not. But that stretch of suburban area along Highway 54 in Pasco County is often an area I tell people to check out when they're here, and often an area our clients end up purchasing. I was actually on a call with someone the other day, and They told me that they really liked Wesley Chapel, but it felt a little bit too far from the water. And they didn't want to be really close to the water because of recent hurricanes. Some people are a little bit more nervous about being close to the water. But they had no idea about this area in between. On the map, I was able to highlight this area to them and talk about the different neighborhoods throughout Land O'Lakes, Lutz, Odessa, and Newport Richey. There's a lot of neighborhoods along this corridor and a lot of new development. And some of them you've probably heard of, like Asturia and Starkey Ranch and the Preserve, and there's a lot of different new development along this area. Following all of that, big hedge funds are coming in and building apartment buildings and storage facilities and Chick-fil-A's, and hedge funds aren't building Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A owns Chick-fil-A's. But all those things are kind of following in the footsteps of all of this new residential area up here. And some of this residential area has been there 20 years, but all of this other stuff is following it now. So that's often an area that I recommend people check out. There are so many more places I could have included on this list, and your situation is very specific to what you want and need. We would love to hear from you and help you narrow in those things. Don't hesitate to call, text, or email anytime. Thanks for coming by.